Welcome, everyone, to the August 6th edition of the Signals from Mars live stream. I'm your host, Victor, and we are back on another Friday night. Thank you for joining us. The show, as always, is brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast and by my web design work, vmrit.com. And we are joined today by a good friend of mine, Roch. I just noticed that you added the Roch there. It was funny. I was watching some entertaining videos from him promoting his latest movie. And, it's funny. I like a lot of what he does outside of wrestling, but then when he just gets back in the ring, I just can't help but not like him. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a fan, but in moderation. I loved him back in the Attitude days. When everybody hated him and Rocky died. That was cool stuff. But after that, it became kind of same thing over and over again. Yeah.
Right. It was interesting because what I had watched today, he was giving a lot of praise to Pat Patterson, which a lot of people don't realize that Pat is really the one who kind of created that Roch character and helped him come up with a lot of the promos and stuff. And, in a way, and he actually said that Pat was his father figure. He said Rocky Johnson was his father, but Pat was his father figure. So you could almost say that without Pat Patterson, he wouldn't be the biggest, action movie star in the world right now.
Yeah, and a fellow French Canadian.
Yeah, there you go.
Pat Patterson.
Yeah. So I asked Roch to come on, and hello to Rob Rowe. Hello to Brad Dahl in Utah. Or maybe you're in LA already. I don't know. Let us know. I've been telling you guys, the people that I have on here, I know I have people tell me, well, you need bigger names. You need this. You need that. I just want to have cool conversations with people. And Roch came to mind because he's originally from Canada. And we've had this during the Patreon discussions where we got to discuss Iron Maiden and we got to discuss Motley Crue. And it was just cool to get people's perspective on music, how they grew up and from different parts of the world. I think it's really neat to, we have Jeremy who's in the UK, Brad, who obviously, let us know the other day that he grew up and went to high school with Tommy Lee and actually met Vince Neil and stuff like that before he was famous. But it's cool to get everyone's stories on this stuff. And Roch and I have been friends, I don't know, for probably at least a decade, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much when I started podcasting, and that was in 2010. So it was really early on. Yeah.
Yeah. I started a year earlier, but we had been, I guess thanks to John Caddick and him starting up the Cast Iron Ring. And then after that, we tried to kind of continue things with our own kind of network. It was funny. The other day, I found a bunch of stuff that we had been using for, we called it the Blast Beat Network, if I'm not mistaken. No, the Blast Beat Syndicate. And like everything else, you try something. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, we've still always remained friends, and Roch has always been good at walking me off the ledge when we talk about wrestling things, which we were just kind of discussing there.
Yes, so, sometimes I think you go a little too far in your conspiracy theories.
I know it was funny when I was writing the thing this week about McMahon purposely releasing people so that AEW would run out of money. I'm like, I know Roch's gonna love this. He's gonna laugh this one up to think, what's this guy drinking to come up with this one? So
pretty much.
But anyway, we're here to talk about metal. You grew up in Quebec. I forget the name of the town, but what was the name of the town?
Sherbrooke.
Sherbrooke. Okay. I'm like, Sherbury. I'm like, no, that isn't right. It's something else. It starts with an SH, but I don't remember. Okay. So Sherbrooke. You had, from what, we've talked about regarding wrestling, you guys did have an arena there where I'm assuming that there was minor league hockey there as well, maybe?
Yeah, we had junior hockey.
Okay.
We did not get a whole lot of concerts in that
Okay.
arena. I can remember of a handful of them. And wrestling, WWF came one time.
Okay.
I remember, and it was their B show, because we were it would have to be a B show, because Macho Man was the headlining.
Okay.
And it was during the Hulk Hogan, reign. So
Right. Yeah. That's funny, because a lot of people still dispute to this day that back at the two peaks, they had A, B, and C tours going on because there was such a high demand, and that's what they did. They had one champ on one show or one tour, another champ on another tour, and then it makes you think, who did they have on the C tour though? Would they have the tag champs maybe, or
I don't know. I always hear about the A tour and the B tour, or the A city and the B city,
right?
But C, you rarely hear about those. So
right, because I know, like on the East Coast, they would base themselves out of there was a place in Pennsylvania where Lennox Lewis, the boxer, later trained. And that was kind of their home base, because it was kind of close to, I believe, where the Wild Samoans had their academy for a while.
Okay.
And so they used that like as a base, and then they'd go out to like smaller like towns and cities on the East Coast from there. And they actually did Raw for a while from there, like when they first moved it from the Manhattan Center, and they were in Pennsylvania. But anyway, so there were no shows there, or similar to probably where I live now, where it was probably pop acts or things that were bigger than what we were into, probably coming into play shows there, right?
The shows that I remember, there was a big club called the Rock Palace.
Okay.
And bands would play there, like Anvil played there.
Oh, okay.
Kick Axe played there. Sword, not the Sword, right. The current, but
Sword, the Canadian band, yeah.
Canadian band. They played there quite a lot. But I know there was some other smaller clubs that smaller bands would play at.
Okay.
But I do remember, and I had a ticket for this. Exciter was supposed to come to the arena, which was a 5,000 seater, and it was the first album when Dan Beeler was not singing anymore.
Okay.
They had a different singer, and apparently they sold like 100 tickets. So they had to cancel the show.
Right.
And then they said, if you want to go to Victoriaville, which was about an hour away, they said, we will honor your tickets there. But apparently the turnout wasn't great there either. So, but they were playing in the arena there, but they did play the show there. So I almost saw Exciter.
That should be a T-shirt. I almost
saw Exciter.
Yeah. So those are all mainly Canadian bands you just mentioned. Yeah. So I mean, I'm
trying to think because in those days I just wasn't old enough to go see shows,
right?
And in clubs, so I didn't. One of my friends, he looked like he was like 20, and even though we were 16, and he would go all the time. He saw Anvil, he saw Sword, he saw Kick Axe, but for me, I just didn't have the guts to even try. I was too much of a scaredy cat. And when you think about it, the worst they would have done is just turn me around and say, no, you can't come in,
Right.
But then, I didn't have a car, I was a teenager, so I had no way to get there. Really, I had no money. So I was like, how am I going to buy a ticket? So, but by the time I turned 18, that club was gone. It had closed down. So we didn't have any metal shows coming. I know that Oblivion played at one point. Mm-hmm. You remember them?
I do not.
Out of Montreal with an E, B-L-E. No, Obliveon. They played downtown, but I wasn't a fan, so I didn't go. So, I wasn't into death metal yet, or even not that they were really death metal, but they were a lot harsher than what I liked at the time.
Right.
So, but by the time I was of age to go there, I was going to Montreal instead.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So Montreal was, I guess, the closest hub to, well, it's the closest city to where you were. So that's where the majority of the shows were going. I mean, let's be honest, Montreal, and I spoke to, why am I all of a sudden forgetting his damn name? From Brave Words.
Johnson?
No.
Tim Henderson.
Tim Henderson. Damn it! I just interviewed him like a month ago, and I'm on the spot here trying to remember his name. This is why you're supposed to take notes, damn it, and get ready for things. But anyway, Tim Henderson said flat out, Montreal is the metal capital of Canada.
It is,
and he said, anyone that tells you otherwise is wrong.
Yeah.
So, 18, you were going to shows in Montreal then?
Yeah. My very first show that I went to was actually in Victoriaville, which is a small town. It's smaller than Sherbrooke. The Metallica played there.
Okay.
I saw Metallica on the Master of Puppets tour.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the first few shows with Jason Newsted, because we had tickets for the September show.
Right.
And it was November, the November show. And Cliff Burton passed in September of that year.
In September, yeah.
So I remember we were all freaking out because it was our first show. We didn't know what was going to happen. And so we were like, oh, is this going to happen? Or how are we going to get reimbursed? And, it was a whole to-do. And then on you've heard of Much Music, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was the Canadian equivalent to MTV.
Right.
Well, Quebec had their own spin-off, which was Musique Plus.
Okay.
So Musique Plus, they kept giving us news every week. Okay, well, the tour's postponed right now, and it looks like they're going to play a little bit later. And then finally, they set a date for December, like a month later. And I'm so glad. No, that's not right to say. I'm glad they postponed, but not because Cliff Burton died, because I would have loved to see Cliff Burton. He was my bass hero, because I play bass.
Right.
But they were supposed to come with Keel opening.
Okay.
So and a local band. So instead we got Metal Church.
Oh, wow.
In December. And Metal Church, Metallica and Metal Church at that point were my number one and number two.
Right.
And depending on the day, they would swap. It's like some days I like Metal Church more than, and Metal Church at that point was The Dark. It was the first two albums.
Right.
So I friggin' love those two albums. So, and then we got lucky. They added a third band, which was Sword from Montreal.
Okay.
And I love them too, even though they're not a thrash band. They're just a heavy metal band.
Right.
So the first band I ever saw live, my very first concert, was actually Sword, when you think about it,
Right.
Then Metal Church, and then Metallica was headlining.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible, because so many people talk about Jason coming in, for the Injustice for All and the Monsters of Rock tour, but I hardly hear anyone talk, and that's so true what you just said. He came in after Cliff died. So he finished the Master of Puppets tour. So he was there, although maybe it isn't as celebrated, or, because obviously what had just happened. So there's less footage of him floating around as part of the band. I'm sure it's there, because Metallica is one of these bands that, for as much as people crap on them, I think that they've done good by the fans with a lot of different things, like allowing people to record shows, allowing people to take in, video cameras when others couldn't, so on and so forth. And even still, the other day we were talking about when Joey Jordison passed away. A lot of people brought up the fact that he played at Castle Donington with Metallica. And I remember reading about it on Blabbermouth. The first thing that I did was I went to the Metallica website and I bought the that show, because they were, up until about I think 2 years ago, they were selling all of their shows online. Now, if you have a membership, you can just stream them. Yeah. But hearing Joey and Dave Lombardo play Battery was just like beyond ridiculous.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, turning the clock back, there probably is footage of Jason with them on that tour, but it's just so emblematic seeing the original 4 guys there with the crosses and with, with what little show they were allotted. Well, even though they were headlining, but they still weren't, a huge arena act. Like you're saying, they were playing a town that was smaller than your town, which is more known for making hockey sticks than anything else.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, the arena was a junior hockey arena there also, just like in Sherbrooke. Right. But there was a huge snowstorm that night. We barely made it there.
Oh, wow.
My sister drove us there, and she went to my grandma's while we were at the concert.
Okay.
And I'd say, I don't know if it was because of the snowstorm, but I'd say in the 5,000 arena, there were maybe 1,000 people in there.
Okay.
So at the most, and most of them were in front of the stage, like trying to get on stage and all that. I was my first concert experience. I was like, nah, I'm not going on the floor. I'm sitting on the sides. I had kind of a side view. I'm like, I'm going to be good there.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Can you remember the first band that you listened to, or the first band that was really pushed? That was remotely hard rock or metal that you had heard maybe on the radio or saw on TV or anything like that?
Kiss.
Kiss, okay.
Kiss is my gateway when I was in 4th grade. So
okay.
So what happened there? The reason why I even heard them. So it was the end of the year party that the teacher was holding. It was like on the last day of school. And he told us, if bring snacks, whatever. And if you want to bring music, we're going to play some of your music. They had a little cheap turntable in the class. And so some people brought music and stuff. And one of the guys in my class, one of my classmates, brought his brother's Destroyer album.
Okay.
And so everybody would get a turn to put. They were allowed to put 2 songs on. So when and I remember looking at the cover before the music even played, I was like, my God, what is this? And I was like freaking out, because I was into comic books. I was like, what the heck? And I'm looking at all this, and he and another classmate of mine, we're all looking at it, and he's pointing out, oh, look at this. This looks like a goat head, and that you got this and you got that, and then he's telling us, yeah, Gene Simmons bites the inside of his mouth to bleed, and I'm like, what? That, and my mind is just blown. And then he puts on God of Thunder when it came to his turn. Right. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I was just loving it. And then he put Detroit Rock City after that. And man, that just, then the whole summer after that, I knew nothing about Kiss. I just knew what those 2 guys told me. And my sister told me that, my sister's 7 years older than me. So she said, you wouldn't shut up that whole summer about Kiss, and you knew nothing about him. And I was just making it up in my head. Oh my God, this, oh my God, that. And then, whenever my mother would go grocery shopping, I would go with her.
Right.
But it wasn't like in a little mall, a small mall. So I was old enough that she would just let me go to, the store was called Miracle Mart, but it was basically like a Kmart or a small Walmart,
Right.
So she would just let me go there, and usually I would go look at toys, and so I just wander around. But then when I got into Kiss, I was like, oh, let me go the record section. And then I would look at all the albums, and every week seemed like there was a new one, like they would sell some, then new ones. Oh my God, that just fueled my imagination all summer. And then my sister finally, for my birthday, was in September. Okay, so I heard Kiss the first time in June of '79. And then in September, that's when Dynasty came out, but that's not what she got me for my birthday. She got me Destroyer.
Okay. So
that was my very first album also, was Destroyer. So yeah, it was quite the summer, because I just wouldn't shut up about it.
That's interesting. The first thing that I ever remember hearing rock wise was a Live 2. My brother had a Live 2 and he had Destroyer. So both of those got played continuously. And
so is your brother older or younger than you?
He's older than me. He's 6 years older than me.
Okay.
So I was lucky that I inherited those almost right away, because by the time like the solo albums came out and Dynasty came out, he was done with the band. He had lost interest in them. And it was funny because we were at a store, and my mother would buy us something every week that we'd go to this store. And I remember my brother wanted a dartboard and I wanted Dynasty. and they both cost around the same thing. And it turned out that I ended up getting My Way. We ended up getting Dynasty. And because my brother hated it so much, my mother felt bad that she went back and got him the dartboard the week later. So, yeah, it was funny. I talked to him not too long ago. I said, outside of I Was Made for Loving You, if you really listen to that album, it's really a solid album all the way through.
Good. It's a really good album. It's just the production is very poppy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. From there though, you went, and we've talked about music a bit in the past, and I remember you talking about your sister, and her musical taste kind of influencing you with some of the stuff that you got into early on. With me, it was the same thing, because we talk about Kiss. My brother got, this is obviously around late 70s, around 80. Between then, he had acquired, I'm trying to think what was first, but Live at Budokan from Cheap Trick, Back in Black by AC/DC, Pink Floyd's The Wall, and Ted Nugent's Scream Dream. And like those albums with those first two Kiss albums we had were like on constant rotation. I mean, it was that was it for us. And then little by little, he would get into bands, and he got into Led Zeppelin. So I learned Led Zeppelin and Yes, and things like that. So I was lucky that he was able to introduce me to all these things. But then music, he kind of fell out with music, and I kind of continued with it. So now it's kind of, now it's been this way for since the 90s, where I'm turning him onto stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So your sister got you Kiss, but was she into Kiss as well?
No. My sister was not into hard rock at all. My sister was into the pop scene.
Right.
So she was into disco when disco was big. Before Kiss, I'm still a huge fan of old school disco.
Right.
I still listen to it. The Saturday Night Fever is one of the greatest disco albums of all time. I'm telling you right now. So, but I still listen. I still listen to ABBA. I still listen to all those bands.
Right.
But she did at one point. I'm not sure when that came out, but when Styx put out Cornerstone,
okay, the
album that has Babe on it.
Okay.
And I think Too Much Time on My Hands is also on that album, maybe.
Right.
So she bought that, and I was like, oh, and that was okay for me from 79 until I got to high school, which was 83. It was Kiss only. I would only listen to Kiss. I would listen to nothing else. My friends at that point were also into Kiss. There was like three of us, and we just listened to Kiss. That's it. And then when one of them would get a new album, like one of them would get the Gene Simmons solo album, so I'll go to his house and listen to it. And then I would get Alive, so they'd come and listen to it. And it was stuff like that. But my sister, there was Styx, and then I turned her on to Def Leppard, Pyromania when that came out. So, but that's the extent of her heaviness. She never got into Zeppelin. She never got into any of those bands. AC/DC, I think she liked Back in Black because it played on the radio. Right. So that she was more of a follower when it came to that. Right. So for her, big influence on me is disco.
Yeah. That's the difference between a band going platinum to just going gold back in the old days. If you really think about it, those casual fans that heard, It Shook Me All Night Long, to go out and buy that album, that was the difference between Back in Black, eclipsing so many of the sales of their previous albums. So, and Jeremy is chiming in from the UK. Hello, sir. Hope you are doing better this week. He says that I still like disco and funk, some great songs. I think a lot of people discount the musicianship.
Oh my God.
A lot of the players, especially as a bass player, the bass held it down for both styles of music.
Yes. If you listen to Ma Baker, and then the other one is there's two that have to hit Ma Baker and
Rasputin.
No, there was another one. Anyway, the bass. Sometimes when I get bored, I just go on YouTube. Huh?
Daddy Cool.
Daddy Cool, that's the one. I go on YouTube and I just watch, bass covers,
Right.
and I watch people play those two songs. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, and you're working, man. You're working. You're not stopping at all. So disco, for the bass, I love that.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so Rob Rowe is saying I play slap, so disco and funk is where it's at. We're inundated with bass players tonight. The ratio is 3 bass players, 1 guitarist, and 1 drummer tonight. If anyone else plays an instrument, please let us know. Yeah, okay. So you started going to Montreal. What's the first big show that you got to see in Montreal?
Okay, so let me just back up a little bit, because when I got to high school, like I was saying, I only listened to Kiss, and then when I got there, it was a really cool school, because in the cafeteria they had like this DJ booth.
Okay,
that was behind glass and all that. They did not have a radio station. It was just to play music in the cafeteria, and they played all the hits of time, Sharp Dressed Man, Michael Jackson, Beat It, and that was. At the time, they played. A couple of the DJs were metalheads, so they would play. That's where I first heard Iron Maiden, Metallica, really dark underground bands like Chateau, out of the UK, and then I was like, wow, this is so friggin' good. And I would talk to the guys, say, hey, what was that you played like 3 songs ago? Oh, that was Slayer. Oh, wow, okay. They would play Evil Has No Boundaries, in the cafeteria. During our lunch break or during recess, and the teachers were fine with it, as long as it wasn't too loud, they were fine with it. Right. So that's where I started to learn about Venom. That's when I first heard about Venom. So to answer your question, the first big band that I saw in Montreal. Okay, so I saw Metallica in '86 in Victoriaville. My next show after that was 2 years later in '88. I saw Metallica on the And Justice for All tour, opening. Okay. So that was my big shot at the Montreal Forum. That's now closed.
Right. Yeah. I don't even, is it the new arena is what, the Bell Center now, or have they changed?
It was the Molson Center at first, and then now it's the Bell Center. Yeah. Okay.
What makes Montreal so special, in your opinion, when it comes to metal? I mean, what's like that it factor? What makes the fans much more accepting? Because you're saying straight up in high school, I mean, in Quebec, it was fine. Where I'm sure where I grew up, if you were playing any of that stuff, it was like, oh no, we got to turn this off because that's devil's music. We can't let them listen to that stuff.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, something that they did not play was Ozzy. For some reason, I don't remember hearing Ozzy at the school.
Okay.
So maybe they were told, hey, you can play your other devil worship music, but don't play Ozzy. I don't know. I don't know. But I really don't know what it is, because even Styx, okay, harder band, hard rock band, they're from Chicago. They said the very first city where they headlined an arena, and it was just like they were touring, and that was the only arena they would play, would be Montreal.
Oh, wow.
And they said they were big in Montreal before anywhere else. Like for Kiss, it was Detroit.
Yeah.
For Styx, it was Montreal. So I don't know why. It's always been like that. You go to a show in Montreal, and the people are just rabid. They love it. They just, mosh pits and, everything. You see everything there. And not the hardcore dances, which I'm glad, because that's, God, when I moved here into Florida, and I was going to shows, and I saw those kids do those hardcore dances where they try to punch people on purpose.
Right.
That turned me off. But in Montreal, they don't do that. It's just a circle pit, and then people help each other up, and so they're just into it. I don't know why. They're rabid. They know all the words. They know. I just don't know what it is. And every concert I've ever seen in Montreal, man, it was always so much fun. Even though I'm the type that kind of stands in the back, because I don't want to get into the mosh pit. I just want to enjoy the show and stuff and not be bothered. And it's great. It's just, the bands are into it, and most of them always say, man, you're the best crowd ever on this tour so far. So
you're hoping they're not saying that on every stop of their tour.
Well, they probably do, but I feel like it's sincere, because usually the way they say it, you can tell that they mean it.
Again, there's a Metallica bootleg of, or not a bootleg because I bought it off of their official site where they do play. I think it's Montreal. It's either Montreal or Quebec City, and they do the Memory Remains and the Marianne Faithfull part where she's, where she's not even saying words. It's just her.
Whatever.
Yeah. So, and it's them just repeating that Marianne Faithfull part for like 5 minutes after the song is done.
Yeah.
And Lars comes out and he says, wow, no one has ever done that before. You guys are one of the best cities. So,
dude, I have goosebumps while you're telling me this.
Yeah, I do too as well, actually. So, because it's one of those things where you listen to it and you feel the energy of the crowd, and you could, you want to think that what he's saying is very sincere. Again, for all the shit that Lars gets, I think when he says stuff like that, he really means it. I
wouldn't be surprised if that's a Quebec City show, because they're huge. They're big in Montreal, but they're even bigger in Quebec City for some reason.
Yeah.
I've seen them one time in Quebec City, and man, the crowd was just even better than Montreal, just for that.
Oh, wow.
So in general, Quebec City is a little bit more subdued, but for Metallica, they lose their minds. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool to be able to go to different parts of the same province, and really in Tim Henderson's case, he's seen shows all over the world. So to be able to say, hey, this is the epicenter. But for the most part, I'm sure that, and have I been to Quebec? I've never been to Quebec. I've been to Ontario, and that's my extent of being in Canada.
Okay.
But they've always said, Quebec's different because it's got more of a European influence. It's got, obviously the French influence. Just add something different to what the English influence.
And it might be the French roots, because a lot of people say that the French are very passionate about what they love. So it could be deeply rooted from there.
Could be,
for all I know.
Yeah, could be. What do you think is your most memorable show that you've seen up there?
Oh, up there, the one that I enjoyed the most, or like the biggest spectacle?
Either or if you want to share both, that's cool.
Okay, so there's two of them that really popped up right away when Kiss did the reunion tour.
Okay.
In '96, I bought my ticket to go see them in Montreal, and that's all they were doing in Quebec at that point. They were only in Quebec, in the province, they were only doing Montreal. And then I got my tickets, and those were in the days where you had to go stand in line at the ticket counter. Right. So I got my ticket, and then they announced they were doing Quebec City the night before.
Okay.
And I already had my tickets for Montreal. I'm like, oh crap! And we had organized their little group, and we were going, like 5 of us were going. And I'm like, crap, I want to go to Quebec City also. You know what? I don't know how long they're going to tour with the original band. If I get the opportunity to see them twice with Peter and Ace, I got to go. So my mother, God bless her, she's so awesome. I had to work, and I couldn't take time off. I said, Mom, can you go and stand in line and go get me tickets? I'll give you cash. She's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So I'm like, all right. So I gave her the money, and the funniest thing is, so she had to go to that little arena I was telling you, the 5,000 seater, where the barely any counts. That's where she had to go buy the tickets. That was the closest Ticketron. We had Ticketron. Right. It's a Ticketmaster at the time. So she goes there, and she's like first in line. Okay, but then she's like, what's going on? The arena was full, and then she's like, oh my God, it was a Jehovah's Witness thing that was going on. So she's like, I'm there, and she was laughing to herself. She's like, I'm there surrounded by Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're doing baptisms, they're doing everything, Right. And she's like, and I'm here to buy fucking Metallica tickets. And she thought the irony was, and I was like, oh Mom, I'm so sorry. If I had known, I would have somehow taken time. She said, no, it was funny because I was watching the people just, it was just funny. So, right. So no, I'm sorry, not Metallica tickets. We're getting Kiss tickets. Yeah. I'm sorry, I mixed my stories, but yeah, then because she knew how Gene is like the demon and all that, Yeah. So So she thought it was ironic that that's where she was buying the tickets. You know, she still talks about it once in a while.
So cool.
So
that was
so Quebec City, okay, because I saw Quebec City first. And dude, I went there with one friend. There was only one friend in the group that wanted to go and see both shows. So we went and we got there, and I swear to God, they started with Deuce. They started that tour with Deuce. And you know the part where they do the choreography at the end of the song? Dude, I swear I almost cried. Because I was like, this was my second time seeing Kiss, but the first time with these guys.
Right.
And I turned to my friend after the song was over. I turned to, his name was Bruno. I said, Bruno, I can just go home now. I'm happy. But I'm not going to go, but I'm going to, you know, I could die right now and I'd be content, you know? And he's like, oh yeah, me too. And then we just, you know, and then the very next night was Montreal. So we drove back to Sherbrooke. It was a 3-hour drive, went back to Sherbrooke. And then the next day we did the 1.5-hour drive back to Montreal with the rest of the gang. And then we saw that show. So that was the most memorable, like spectacle and how I felt. But for a show that I just love the performance and the crowd reaction, and just like in an intimate setting, was Cradle of Filth. It was on the Midian tour in 2000. Okay. They played at the Metropolis in Montreal, which is a very large club. So about 1,500. And man, they killed that. I have a bootleg recording of it on CD that I still listen to once in a while. And man, that show was, Midian is one of my all-time favorite albums. And just that show was just top notch from top to bottom. So
let's see. JWs are huge Metallica fans. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses are huge Metallica fans. That's what the prophet says. You'd think they would really be into Watchtower.
Yeah.
When did you move down to Florida?
Well, okay, so I lived in Quebec, in Sherbrooke, until 1999.
Okay.
Well, I met my wife, my wife to be. She lived in Vermont, so I moved to Vermont in '99 and was there for about 3 years. And then in 2002, we moved down here to Florida, and we've been here in the Orlando area ever since.
Right. Okay. So immediately, what differences did you notice from the U.S. crowds as opposed to the Canadian crowds? You mentioned right away the moshing versus the slam dancing.
Yeah, the hardcore dance or whatever they call it.
Yeah. What other differences did you notice?
So there was that, and the crowd was not as vigorous as I was used to. You know, people would just stand there and barely react to songs, you know. So that was the big difference. Like, oh man, the crowds are tame here. There's nothing except for the occasional, you know, smaller shows I saw at small clubs, you know, that the people were rabid, and those were far and few between. You know, it was the crowd is a lot more, but that may just be Orlando. I don't know. Orlando, you know, it's more of a tourist town, so I don't know. But yeah, that's what I noticed, that the crowds were kind of quiet.
Okay. You mentioned seeing Kiss and Cradle of Filth up there in Montreal. What do you feel is the biggest shows that you've seen down there in Florida, or the ones that have made like the most impression on you?
Okay, so well, I saw Kiss here also in Orlando with Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer, and that was like visually, that was beautiful. It was just they were, you know, when arena football was a thing, and Orlando had a team, and then LA Kiss, they came and played it. That was the All-Star game, and Kiss played the night before in the arena here, and that's when they announced earlier that day they announced the LA Kiss. So I was at the show that night.
Oh wow!
So that was amazing. That was one of the bigger shows. But the ones that really made an impression on me, when I was with Radioactive Metal, I got to go 3 years to the Rockstar Mayhem tours in Tampa. So I got to take pictures in the pit and all that. And those are my best experiences concert-wise, even though it was hot as hell, you know, during the day, because it's so humid and you know, you're in the sun and stuff. But I was taking pictures of all these great bands: Anthrax, Slayer, Motorhead, Amon Amarth, God, name them. I took pictures of them, and I was doing interviews and stuff. So that's just the whole thing. But that was like because of the podcast, I was able to get that kind of experience where I'll never forget those 3 shows. It was amazing.
Okay. I want to say hello to Newton Targaryen, who's joined us. I don't know if he's a relative of the of the Breaker of Chains and Mother of Dragons, based on that name. But so let's jump on into your time with Radioactive Metal, because you were, part of a podcast that still exists now, for quite some time. The show, by the time, and I don't remember the history off the top of my head, were you part of the original foundation of that show, or did you join the show after it already started?
I joined the show after it started. It started with Snowy and Dario.
Okay.
Dario Psycho. And they started together. And then I was his listener, and I emailed them a few times. And then I was doing a podcast just for fun about Captain America, because I'm a huge comic book collector. Right. And so Dario suggested to Snowy that, to have me on, just because I had my own podcast and I knew metal and stuff. So he's like, okay. So I came on, and then I started being on there regularly, almost every week. And then at one point, Dario was like, hey, you know how to do this stuff. I'm tired of doing podcasts. So he said, would you take my place and just take over the editing and all that? And I'm like, if Snowy's okay with it, yeah, sure. And then it worked out. And so I was there for 8 years. Okay. I did that till 2018. So.
Right. When you stopped being part of the show, I know that you would kind of ramp things up from a work perspective, but was there like any burnout on your end too, where you just needed to step away from podcasting?
Yeah, because it was taking a lot of time. You know how it is, the editing, trying to book interviews, doing interviews, going to shows. I was doing pictures on top of that, and then editing my pictures, and because I would take 1,500 pictures in one night, and then I had to go through them, and that was several hours, and so and then what burned me, I got burned a couple of times on interviews towards the end, and I just you get, and you know how it is, your email is probably inundated with samples and not samples, but promos. Yes. Yeah. My God, we'd get, like, in a week, we'd get hundreds of them. And I was like, I just got, oh my gosh, like, this is too much. And work was ramping up a lot. So I told Snowy, I said, listen, I can't do this anymore. My heart wasn't in it anymore, Right. And so what do you want to know who burned me on interviews?
Yeah, sure.
So I was supposed to talk to Nita Strauss.
Okay. Wow.
And had everything set up with her boyfriend, the drummer.
Right.
And I have my questions ready and all that. Literally a couple of hours before I'm going down there, and I took a few hours off of work and stuff. He emails me and he says, hey, sorry, but it won't happen. She's not doing interviews tonight. And it was towards the end of the tour. Wow. And at the time, she had just started doing stuff for WWE. We would see her on NXT, and we saw her at WrestleMania or something. Right. So, and the Performance Center, for the people who don't know, WWE has a training center here in Orlando. And I heard a few days later that she was at the Performance Center. They had invited her to go check it out. So that's why she blew me off for an interview. Instead of saying, oh yeah, we'll do it later, whatever. Right. And then the other time, and I don't hold a grudge for this one. Nita Strauss, I kind of hold a grudge for it, because I felt, okay, you had the pretty girl invited you instead of the the punk.
There are other ways of going about saying, hey, something came up. Can we do this? Yeah. You said,
I wasn't even offered to do it at another time. So that pissed me off. And then the other one was Niall. I was supposed to talk to Carl Sanders. Okay. I had already talked to him once. Great interview, super nice guy. I don't blame him at all for this. But when I got there, he had to go. Some equipment had broken, so he and his guitar tech had gone somewhere to go try and find replacement parts and stuff. So he never made it back on time. So that I grudge for that, Right. But then I was like, okay. And it seemed like it was happening more and more. I was having a hard time booking interviews and stuff. I was like, okay, I'm just done. Yeah, that's what broke me. This was those two interviews.
Well, since I started doing the live stream, which I kind of ramped up earlier this year, I've had that happen once a few weeks back.
Mhm.
And this is public knowledge because, you know, I put up, you know, this the same way that I put a graphic up saying that you were coming on. I had put a graphic up saying that Ken Mary, who is the drummer of Flotsam and Jetsam now, was coming on the show. And after I put everything up, I get an email from his publicist saying, "Oh, he just realized he's traveling that day." I'm like, it's going to be a nightmare to take everything down because, you know, when I set the graphic up and set the event up, it copies everything to 14 different social media platforms.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a real chore to take everything down and then reschedule. And actually within the last like 3 weeks, they've changed the system so that I can now do it from one central location, which is cool.
Good.
But previous to that, you know, it was like, fuck it. I'm just the next one. I'm just going to schedule at the same time because it's just going to take me too long to take everything down and reword everything.
Yeah.
So they tell me, well, Michael Gilbert, the guitarist, is available. Oh, okay, cool. Same as you. I researched all the questions. It coincides that when I started doing college radio, Flotsam had a big album that was pushed to the moon and back called Quattro. Yeah. And I was like, cool. So I'll ask him, instead of asking him about Jason Newsted, I'm going to ask him about Quattro and the fact that, for example, Chris Cornell wrote a song with them on that album.
Okay.
Which I'm sure not a lot of people ask. So I'm really getting amped up for the interview, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And I just spent an hour doing this by myself and talking to people in the chat and like looking up the that day's happenings. And it stinks, you know, even for me, 12 years into this, I still get people that either flake out or I get, you know, well, unfortunately, well, here's something that I had recently. I asked the host of another show to come on and talk, and her response was, "How many Twitch followers do you have?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "Well, if you don't have enough Twitch followers, I'm not going to do your show." I'm like, okay, well, not for nothing, but go scratch. You know, if that's if your whole thing is, oh, well, you're not big enough or you're not this or whatever, then I'm sorry, you know, then obviously my show isn't for you. So, so that's it. When did you start getting into, you know, more extreme metal, like death metal and black metal and stuff like that? Because you mentioned Cradle before, and obviously being in Florida, Tampa's more or less the epicenter of death metal. You know, for as much as people want to say no, it was Gothenburg, Sweden. Well, before the Gothenburg sound, it was Morrison sound in Tampa.
Yeah, and they're two different sounds completely.
Yeah.
So, see, for me, okay, so I was into more of like the hair bands for quite a while,
right?
And you know, when grunge started really taking off, I was like, I really did not like any of the grunge stuff going on,
right?
So I barely liked the Smells Like Teen Spirit, barely, you
right?
know? And then the rest, I heard a little bit of it, like, nah, this is not for me. And at the time, one of my close friends, who I'm still friends with right these days, he still lives up there. He was really heavy into death metal.
Okay.
And every time we were in his car, he'd say, "I'm going to make you like it. I'm going to make you like death metal." And I was like, "Oh, come on." Yeah. I was like, then he would put a song, but it was always like, seems like it to me, like it was always the same 3 songs he would put on.
Okay.
And then I became a fan of those songs. And then I was like, okay, well, I like this, and let me go buy the album. And then, okay. So the 3 songs, first one was Martyr by Fear Factory.
Okay.
Off the first album.
Right. Yeah, off of
that's one of my all-time favorites. Pull the Plug by Death.
Okay.
and then Incarnate Solvent Abuse by Carcass.
Okay.
Those were the 3 songs that it seems like it was always those songs he kept playing. And I just became a fan. So I remember buying Carcass. Carcass, I think, was the first one that I bought. Okay. And I was like, wow. And, and then I really liked it because, there was the low growls. I wasn't a super big fan of, but I liked Jeff Walker's higher pitched screams,
Okay.
So I was like, okay. So I got into Carcass, and then I got used to the low growls, and I went and got Fear Factory, and then I got Death. Death took me quite a while to get, though. It wasn't until the album after Human, Individual Thought Patterns. That's the one that I got into. So then I started going back. But so it was early 90s, like maybe 92, 93 that I got into the extreme metal. And then I liked it so much that I just went deep underground. That's when I got into Cradle of Filth, and I got into Nightwish also, which is totally different. But they were so underground at the time. They only had the first 2 albums, Oceanborn and I can't remember the name of the Angels Fall First. That I was like, wow, and it was so different, that I got into that too very heavily. So so early 90s, and then I just went deeper and deeper, and then I would not listen to any grunge. Slipknot, I considered, I know I'm totally wrong, but to me, Slipknot, I considered to be a grunge band, even though they had nothing to do with grunge. I just did not want, because they were too mainstream for me. Anything that was mainstream, I would not listen to at all. I just stuck to my underground stuff.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because again, one of the things that that I saw somebody say was that Joey Jordison was kind of responsible for bringing in a lot of like death metal playing into more like mainstream metal.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, similar kind of thing where for me, up until Metal Health by Quiet Riot, for me it was Kiss all day, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, navigated towards a lot of the, the hard rock, the glam bands that came out in the 80s. But the thing was, for me, my neighbor through wrestling, WrestleMania 3, Alice Cooper came out with Jake the Snake. And he said something to the extent of Jake's DDT is gonna be more impactful than a Megadeth or an Anthrax concert or something along those lines.
Okay.
And we were like, wait, Anthrax? Megadeth? What's that? and my neighbor went out and he got Peace Cells and he got State of Euphoria.
Okay.
So that was like my gateway into thrash. And that, after that, I took off with, I still liked the other stuff, but I was one of the people that I was going to school with that could listen to both and didn't, well, you're a poser, you're this, you're that, because I heard that as well. Well, if you still listen to Kiss, you're a poser. I'm like, I'll listen to whatever I want. I don't need to by anybody's rules.
But then the people who were into Kiss and Aerosmith, when they heard Anthrax and Megadeth, they were like, "Well, that's just noise." Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So
similar situation for me. The first time, when I got to college radio, the outgoing metal director, his favorite band was Cannibal Corpse. Oh, and I remember him giving me this whole lecture on, well, if you like Queen, then you're not truly a metalhead. I'm like, the hell does that have to do with anything? I can like, the analogy that I use all the time now, I can like hamburgers and spaghetti. I don't have to choose one or the other, I can like both. Doesn't mean that, I don't like one a little more than the other,
The thing is that that's an elitist point of view. Right. That's a guy who's just like purist, elitist, like Snowy likes to say on Radioactive Metal. He's true and he's cult. Right. It's like, but the older I get, and I'm listening to these interviews with some of these rock stars, or the guys that we used to worship when we were growing up, and they talk and say, "Oh yeah, I love Thin Lizzy, I love Styx, right. I love Henry Rollins." Sometimes some of the stuff he brings up, I'm like, I can't believe he likes that stuff. Right. But it makes sense that because of the type of music he wound up doing, which was really kind of weird hard rock, indie stuff, it makes sense because you hear a little bit of all that stuff in there,
Right.
So
yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. It's funny because I've had a lot of conversations with true and elitist metal fans here in Spain who are big, black metal or big death metal fans. And they'll say, well, band that I can't stand that gets too much credit is Kiss. I'm like, you're wearing a Celtic Frost t-shirt. Do you know that Thomas Gabriel's favorite band is Kiss, and that's why he plays an Ibanez Iceman because of that? No, that has nothing to do with Kiss. I'm like, he wears Kiss t-shirts all the times when he's not up on stage. Why? They're paying him to wear the t-shirt? Come on. So it's just ridiculous. And we talked about this last week. I had Brad, who's in the chat, on, and I was talking about Mastodon, how a lot of people have said, oh, I want them to go back to what it was like with the first few releases. But the band has said, hey, we grew up listening to Thin Lizzy, Kiss, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin. So the older we get, the more we're going to gravitate towards those sounds.
Exactly.
So with music now, you've actually said that you haven't kept up with a lot of stuff since leaving the podcast. I mean, it's hard. Like you said, you're used to getting all of this stuff, and there is so much out there. I mean, within most of the people that are in the chat are in my Patreon group as well. And I mean, I'm posting anywhere between 2 to sometimes 8 videos a day from just stuff that's sent to me. And I mean, at the end of the day, some of the stuff I like, some of the stuff I don't like. Some of the stuff, for example, I posted a Jeff Scott Soto video the other day, and I'm not a fan of his voice. I like his voice on the first Inve album, but I don't like a lot of what he does now, a lot of the AOR music. But I know that there are people that enjoy that stuff, so I still post it. And there's some, like I said, there's some stuff that I post that I don't like. There's other stuff that I absolutely love, and then I know that others don't like. So I just throw it out there to see. There's just so much going on. I mean, to me, I almost prefer someone saying what saying, hey, I stopped because it was just too much, as opposed to you run into people that with their arms folded, nothing good ever came out after 89. But, you found something that interested you after that time period. There was other music that became popular, but you went a little more underground and a little, more extreme with that stuff. To me, I mean, the first time that extreme, like guttural vocals made sense to me was Testament. After The Ritual, they put out the album Low, and Chuck Billy started incorporating guttural vocals, and with each album he progressively added them more.
Demonic.
So they kind of like reformed that classic lineup, where he still does it now, but not as much as he did during that 90s time period, where it was funny because Testament, to me, a lot of people will say, well, 90s metal sucked, but to me, Testament was kind of the litmus test because they got progressively heavier, but still put out interesting music, at least to me.
Yeah. I followed Testament for years and years and years, even after their heyday. Especially when they put out the Low, and it was was it Demonic, the next one after that? Where he really went like guttural. There's one album where he's very, I think it's Demonic. So and I remember interviewing Chuck Billy, and I hadn't even thought about it because I had listened to the album so much, it didn't even dawn on me that it was almost like a death metal album. It's just that the voice was, but not the music. So I was interviewing him. I said, "Hey, would you ever do a project with a death metal band?" Well, and he goes, "Well, I've already done that." I'm like, "Really?" He says, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Demonic." It's like I sing death metal vocals the whole thing. And then I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." It's just that the music is not like blast beats and not what you're used to hearing, but the vocals are. So I felt like kind of like a fool there. Like, oh, I'm sorry. One of those times you're like, don't.
Yeah, it's Low, Demonic, and The Gathering, or the three that they released. Yeah,
and Demonic is the one he was referring to.
Yeah. Well, that's getting back to Flotsam. Back in the college radio days, we split the interviews, the metal interviews. Chris, who does Galaxy of Geeks with me, was he was the one that took over as metal director, and I was his assistant. So the internet didn't exist back then, and he was going to interview the drummer of Flotsam, Kelly. I forget his last name.
Yeah,
but there were two questions that kind of pissed him off, because we were like, "Oh, thrash band. Oh, they must be, from the San Francisco Bay Area somehow,
Oh, okay.
And obviously they're from Arizona.
Yeah.
And, being 18 and 19 years old and not having the information you have today, he kind of flew off the handle with that. He's like, "We're not from San Francisco. We're from Arizona," or whatever. And then after that, he asked him about what his take was about having to replace two bass players that went on to bigger bands. And he said something to the extent of, "Well, we applaud Jason Newsted because he's still a brother of ours, but Troy Gregory didn't leave Flotsam and Jetsam prongs in a bigger band than Flotsam." And, he went off on Prong, and he went off on Troy Gregory and all this stuff. And like the interview was like very abrupt, and he was like very like snooty after that. So
yeah, that sucks when that happens.
Yeah. But like I said, no internet back then. What did we get? Information once every once a month, and it was already like 3 or 4 months old. So
yeah, if you happen to have a magazine that has an article with them, and they happen to talk where they're from, it's like,
right.
Shit, how am I supposed to know?
Right. Yeah. Social media.
Unless they send you a press kit.
Right. Yeah. They would send flyers, but it was play Never to Reveal by Flotsam and Jetsam and get it up on the charts. That was it. That was the extent of what they would send us. It was just stuff to pump up the music and do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you've been heavily involved in graphic design stuff as well over the years. Well, you mentioned obviously a Captain America podcast, and you mentioned your interest in comics. Did seeing Destroyer, do you think that helped amp things up for you?
You mean what?
From a graphic design side of things, did that kind of fuel your interest more in, getting into maybe that side of things as you got older?
Well, I come from an artistic family. My mom paints.
Okay.
Well, she doesn't paint anymore, but she painted for years. Right. My uncles also, and I always had an interest in art in general,
Okay.
And then, when I was in high school and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I really loved art classes and stuff like that. So, and then I was like, well, how can I have a career in art? I was like, I'm not going to be a professional painter, It's like,
right.
So it was like, then I researching it and talking with a guidance counselor and stuff. Oh, there's graphic design and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try my hand at that. And then I got in, and that's been my career, my whole life. I never got out of it, and I used that when I was doing Radioactive Metal. I was doing all the episode show cards and all the social media and the Facebook page. And at one point I was the one running the web page, and that was cool because I got to learn how to use WordPress and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think it was a band. I mean, even back then, I could tell you if it was a bad cover or not. I looked at an album cover and said, "Oh shit, that one sucks." So,
right.
But then I saw some stuff like I distinctively remember, when I was a little kid going to the store Miracle Mart and looking at the albums, and I remember seeing was it Queen Hot Space?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is cool. And it's just colors, it's just like faces with colors. I was like, wow, this is a really cool cover, and I was like, what, 8 years old, 7 years old,
Right.
No, I was 9 years old. Yeah. No, I was 9 when I discovered. So I was like 9 years old, So I'm like, so I don't know. I've always had interest in art, and that's a topic we often talked about on Radioactive Metal. When we talked about a band, we do like a spotlight episode on a band. So we would pick our favorite songs and we would talk. And if we did interviews with them, we would talk about the interviews. And then there was always the artwork section of the episode, which, so Roch, what do you think of the covers? Which is your favorite? So then I would just go off on rants on the covers, So, but yeah, it's just always been a thing. I've always been interested in art, so.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you work with the most? Illustrator now, or what's?
It's a mix of Illustrator and InDesign.
Okay.
InDesign is more for page layout.
Yeah.
And I worked for many years when I was doing textbooks layouts, and now I'm in the trade show world. So I use a lot of both. Very rarely do I use Photoshop. So my Photoshop chops are very, very limited now. I haven't kept up with it as much as I should. So, but yeah, Illustrator is a big part of it. Yeah.
I know the feeling because I have theoretically I have a certificate in graphic design, and during the course that I took, we had to learn everything that Adobe was had available back then, and I had to learn InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop. Out of all of those, I use Photoshop the most, but I use Audition and Premiere quite a bit now as well. I've been spending hours with Premiere yesterday and today. So
I used to use our first website was with PageMill, Adobe PageMill.
Okay.
And that was rough. That was rough. Oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah, things have come a long way. Even their Dreamweaver is they've had it for years, but it's just so heavy and cumbersome. It just doesn't work. But
I was just so happy to learn WordPress. I was like, oh, this is a godsend. This is so easy.
Yep. I think our extent of InDesign was like 3 days out of class because we were running out of time.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, this is how you and what I did in class actually was I set up a brochure using InDesign, and what I'd done was I'd taken a picture of Charlie Benante, and then did like some duotone. It was a black background with like duotone circles. So it I kind of made it look like a comic book ink behind him.
Yeah.
And I did like I was going to do a whole thing with listing out all the Anthrax albums and all this. And I was like, wow, I'm going to do this because this was around the time I started podcasting. Like, wow, I'm going to do this for all my guests. Yeah. And then I ended up, it took me forever. I'm like, well, cool example, but when
you start, unless you do it a lot, it takes a while. If you're used to it, you can whip them out fast. Like all the show cards I was doing for every episode. The first few took me a while, but after a while, I got a method. It's like boom, boom, boom. Okay, I do this, and then, okay, this looks good. Oh, let's move the picture a little bit or not. And,
Yeah.
But InDesign, I'm in the company I work for, and we're an international company, but on the East Coast here, if anybody has an InDesign question, they come to me.
Oh, wow.
I know it inside out. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because of all my years in doing textbooks, it was all heavy text.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Have you ever had the itch to podcast again?
Not really. And actually, we were talking about Radioactive Metal. It's either released today or it's about to, episode 666.
Okay. And
they asked me to come and record with them because
we
would put the band back together for one episode. And, because I remember when we turned to 500, around that time, we were talking, say, hey, we need to think about something for 666. It's far, but, and then I saw them saying, hey, we're recording episode 666. Give us ideas for songs. I was like, well, shit, I want to be on there. We talked about it so much back in the day. So I recorded with them. And, it was fun. It was great. It was a lot of reminiscing, but I don't really miss it. I once in a while, I record a French-Canadian wrestling podcast with some guys up in Montreal. So I do that once in a while. but that's like once every 3-4 months, for one episode when they want to talk about NXT. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. And the Snowy also has a wrestling podcast on the side, wrestling night in Canada, and he wants me to come on there to talk about NXT, and all that stuff. So that's the extent of my podcasting these days. People invite me, and as long as I don't have to hit record myself, I'm
right.
I don't miss the work. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing some stories with us tonight.
Before we go, I know this has been going on for a while, but can I show you some of my old vinyls?
Absolutely.
Bands that you've probably never heard of that are very influential for me.
No problem at all. I posted a video before in Patreon, which was I do an album of the week.
Okay.
And I posted, actually, it was Anthrax's "You've Come for Your Wall" was what I selected this week. So, but
gotcha.
Go ahead.
So when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, the albums in Canada that we would get, they were all on a label called Bonsai.
Okay.
Bonsai Records. And if you've ever listened to Radioactive Metal, me and Snowy would talk about it a lot because we both bought Bonsai Records. Right. Metallica, the first 2 were on there. Slayer, the first 2 were on there. Venom, so all that stuff. So I still have some of my original Bonsai records. This is my Kill 'Em All.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And in the back, at the bottom, let's see. It's a little dark. But I don't know if you can see. It says Bonsai Records right there.
I just see the glare.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, so these are very hard to find. They're Canadian pressings,
Right.
So I still have that. But really, what I wanted to show you, I talked about Chateau briefly earlier.
Okay.
They're a British band from the new wave of British heavy metal.
Okay.
And this album, Firepower,
mm-hmm.
excellent. If you can get your hands on that and listen to that, it is amazing. Amazing. They the guys at the at school at my high school that played music during recess, there's 2 songs on here that they played all the time, and that's what had me buy this album. Okay. I had to pay, back in 80. We're talking 85, 86. You can only get it as an import, and I paid $60 for this in 86. So right. Today would be over $100,
Right.
So, and then the other one, the last one I wanted to show you, this was a local band that sang in English. They were from Magog, Quebec, which is really near Sherbrooke, and they put out this 5-song EP. It's a band called DDT.
Okay.
Okay, and the album's called Let the Screw. And then you turn around and it says, turn you on. Let the screw turn you on. So basically, you can kind of see what's going on here, so, okay. But this band was a local band, and they were so good. They played a lot at the Rock Palace, that club I told you about.
Okay.
And they only did like 500 copies of this vinyl, and I still have it. It's an EP. It's a 5-song EP. And a few years ago, some company, I guess, bought the rights, and they put out a CD of it, a reissue CD that has like an extra 20-something songs on it.
Oh, wow.
So it's all demos and live tracks and all that. But this band, if you ever get the chance, look them up. They're called DDT out of Canada, and it's amazing stuff. They're 5 songs, the 5-song EP, very influential to me. It really steered me to going into metal a lot, because one of my friends told me about it in high school because his brother was friends with the drummer.
Okay.
So then word of mouth, and then my friend got it, and he's like, oh, you got to buy it. And he brought it into school one day, and I was looking at it. It's like, okay. So then I went to my local independent store, and they had a couple copies left, and I bought it. And like I said, there's only like 500 copies of this in the world. Mm-hmm. So, and I still have mine, from back in 80 something. So
very cool. What does DDT stand for when it comes to the band?
It's the actual, that DDT is actually poison. It's poison.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not a acronym for anything. It's DDT. It's
DDT. It's Agent Orange, basically.
Yeah. Basically. So yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, we have to talk about Canadian bands in the future.
Oh yeah. So. Anvil and all those guys.
Absolutely. So awesome. Again, I want to thank you for spending the last hour plus with me here, and everyone who joins me every week in the chat here. Always fun to catch up with you, and different than we usually talk via Facebook Messenger. And it's usually
again, we talk about wrestling.
We talk about wrestling all the time.
Conspiracy theories on wrestling.
There you go.
And my NXT spoilers.
And your NXT spoilers. Although now with them live all the time.
Yeah. Doesn't happen so much. Yeah. I'm going next Tuesday.
Okay.
I got my confirmation to go. So
cool. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna end the show and then I'll catch up with you in just 1 second. All right.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for having me.
Guys, it was an awesome interview there with Roch, the Roch, as he called himself during tonight's episode. I want to thank everyone that joined us in the chat. The last week's episode will be released tomorrow. I've been working on the transcribing side of things, trying out a bunch of different things to try to help take the podcast and the live show to the next level here. And if you're on Patreon, you guys already know what I'm talking about. If not, then you guys will see. Just follow on social media and all that, and you'll see all the stuff that I'm working on. In any event, thanks, guys, for spending your Friday with me. I appreciate it. And we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream, brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast. See ya.